Afternoon. Welcome to our next in the series of discussions regarding the ongoing recovery efforts in Haiti. My name is Randy Pistana. I'm Assistant Director of Research at the Jack D. Gordon Institute for Public Policy, and we are excited to host this discussion with a phenomenal group of panelists. Just some few shout outs before we kick off the session. I do want to recognize our FIU partners across the university, the Kimberly Green Latin American Caribbean Center, the Extreme Events Institute, and the African Diaspora Studies Program. This panel builds off of a previous panel that we held on September 9th, but with a little bit of a different scope to it, focused more on the internal recovery efforts, the earthquake, rather than the larger international response. If you want to watch that previous panel, I do want to direct you to srh.fiu.edu, and you can see the Haiti video. You can see the different data, the dashboards that we have there to monitor the ongoing situation and recovery efforts in Haiti. But without much further ado, I do want to get to the focus of today, which is the discussion. And we want you to be able to participate in this discussion as well. So if you look at the Q&A feature on the bottom of your screens, you can ask questions to the panelists directly. We'll try to get through as many questions as we can throughout the duration of today. Now, moderating today's discussion, and frankly, no one better to talk all things Haiti than Jacqueline Charles, right? Jacqueline, I promised her I'd keep the bio short, so I'll keep it direct, but no one is better on the Caribbean or Haiti or any issues related similarly than Jacqueline. She's a Pulitzer Prize finalist and Emmy Award-winning force correspondent for the Miami Herald, with responsibility looking at Haiti and the English-speaking Caribbean. Jacqueline, I turn it over to you to kick off the panel.
All right, thank you very much for having me again. And I have to tell you that this is a panel that I've been looking forward to. I've done a couple of panels now, but I think that with all the discussions in the last couple of weeks in terms of the internal crisis in Haiti, the migration issues, the earthquake has sort of fallen behind. And I think that it's important for people to remember that there was a deadly 7.2 magnitude earthquake that struck Haiti on August 14th. And while some people in their minds are comparing it to 2010, I caution not to, because this is much more complicated, logistically challenging in a different way that 2010 is. And today I'm very happy that we have a distinguished panel that can, bring us up to speed on the response, the recovery, the challenges ahead. And for those who aren't sure about what happened or how, the international community along with Haiti was able to respond, hopefully today they'll be able to get some of those questions answered. First up, we have Dr. Jerry Chandler, Director General of the Directorate General of Protection Civile. This is Haiti's disaster response agency. Dr. Chandler graduated from the State University of Medicine and Pharmacy with a pharmacy degree in 1997. He received his medical doctorate degree from the University of Notre Dame de Haiti in 2009. He joined the National Alliance of Directors of the State and Territories of Haiti as HIV program manager. And in 2010, he became the HMIS consultant. Around this time, Dr. Chandler was appointed to the Office of Occupational Accident Insurance, Sickness, and Maternity, better known as OFACMA in Haiti, a government-run health insurance program that deals with occupational emergencies, where he was the director of the emergency unit. There, his work focused mainly on setting up and developing the medical emergency department for OFACMA-affiliated hospitals in Port-au-Prince, Cap-Haïtien, and Les Cayes, which is one of the areas that was struck by the quake. He has also developed a medical disaster unit that has been deployed several times in disaster situations nationwide. He was also advisor for the Office of the First Lady for Health and Medical Emergency Matters. Since May 2017, Dr. Chandler has been the director of the Civil Protection Office, which is the government's Office for Emergency and Disaster Management. Next, we have Tim Callaghan, who he and I have run into each other many times, unfortunately. Haiti's Earthquake Disaster Assistant Response Team, DART, leader for USA's Bureau for the Humanitarian Assistance, BHA, the US government led for international disaster response. As DART leader, Mr. Callahan oversees a team of disaster experts in Haiti who are providing humanitarian assistance to people affected by the August 14th earthquake. This team deployed on August 14th and is heading the U.S. government's response, coordinating with the government of Haiti and the U.S. military and working with humanitarian partners to provide life-saving aid. When not overseeing a DART, Mr. Callahan is BHA's Latin America and the Caribbean Senior Regional Advisor based in San Jose. Since 2003, Mr. Callahan has been the principal BHA representative in the region with overall responsibility for response and preparedness efforts. During his time with USAID, Mr. Callahan has led several high-profile USAID disaster assistance response teams, including the Venezuela regional crisis, 2019 Hurricane Dorian in the Bahamas, the 2017 Caribbean hurricanes, 2016 Hurricane Matthew in the Bahamas, Jamaica, and Haiti, the 2014 through 2016 West Africa Ebola outbreak, the 2010 Haiti earthquake, the 2010 Haiti cholera outbreak, and the 2008 Georgia complex emergency. And last but definitely not least, we have Bruno Le Marquis, Deputy Special Representative of the United Nations Integrated Office in Haiti, Resident and Humanitarian Coordinator for the country. Mr. Le Marquis joined the United Nations in 1992 and brings to this position extensive managerial and leadership experience in development, humanitarian affairs, and peace building. Most recently, he served as Deputy Assistant Administrator and Deputy Director of the United Nations Development Program, Crisis Bureau, Global Policy Network, following his role as Deputy Director of the UNDP Crisis Response Unit from 2014 to 2018. He previously served in various capacities in UNDP's Bureau for Crisis Prevention and Recovery from 2009 to 2014 and in UNDP's Regional Bureau for the Arab States from 2002 to 2006. Mr. Le Marquis has ample experience in field assignments, including in Haiti, where he previously was, Somalia, the occupied Palestinian territories, Cambodia, and Ethiopia. And again, I want to thank each of you for joining us this afternoon. And I'm going to begin with Dr. Jerry Chandler. If you can start by starting us off with an intro.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Charles. Thank you to the Florida International University for having me on this panel. And hello to all the participants on the panel and everyone participating with us this afternoon. So I have the pleasure of presenting a review of what's been done and where we're at to say in regard to the response of this disaster that occurred on August 14, 2021. Just before I begin, I want to confirm my presence up in its full screen. Jackie? Okay, very good. All right, so real quick, as it was outlined in the introduction, there was this earthquake that occurred on August 14. Its magnitude was 7.2, and it occurred in the department of Nip, which is on the southern peninsula. And as you know, administratively and geographically, Haiti is divided in departments. We would say that this earthquake had a serious impact on 3 departments: the Department of Nip, Department of Grandance, and Department of South. But it was strong enough to be felt nationwide. Everyone basically felt it, even in some portions of the Dominican Republic. And this earthquake was violent enough, like as I said, to generate extensive damage in these 3 departments and be felt in various portions of the country. The Bureau of Mines and Energy, which is the institution that monitors earthquakes in Haiti, confirmed the report and also reported several hundred aftershocks following this main earthquake. Unfortunately, damage assessment was quite extensive. We're talking about 2,248 fatalities, 12,900 wounded people, 329 people are still missing. We're talking about 130,000 damaged houses, and out of which 50,000 were completely destroyed, we're talking about 730,000 people that are directly affected by this disaster. When we say 720,000, we're talking about 3 departments, which total 1.8 to 2.2 million people. So it's really extensive in terms of people that were directly impacted by this catastrophe. So again, this is very important, and this is very strong and extensive. The difference between this and 2010 is, first, the magnitude was stronger, but the big difference is the fact that this occurred in a rural setting instead of, whereas the one in 2010 occurred mainly in urban settings, Léogâne and Port-au-Prince, where these impacts were quite different, and the environment was different as well, as Mrs. Charles outlined in her introduction. Now, in terms of damage assessment, still we did a breakdown, and we saw that the Department of is the one mostly affected with the most number of fatalities and the biggest number of population that's affected. And again, this is where we have the most needs right now for humanitarian response efforts that are still ongoing. And this is something that we're going to talk about further down in our presentation. And consequently, immediately after the quick, and that we had the information and confirmation of happened was the activation of the EOCs. The EOCs are the emergency operation centers, which the Protection Civil has, and that are everywhere nationwide. We have 10 main emergency operations centers, one in each department, and we have emergency operation centers also at the municipal level, at the municipality. So all of those were activated. So we had all a group of volunteers that were up and about to provide assistance to help the population, and also to do the coordination and supervision of the field operations that started immediately after the quake happened. Also, I need to remind everyone that 2 days after the quake, we were being struck by tropical storm, which was, thank God it was just a tropical storm, but still it was a lot. It came in with a lot of rain and impacted those departments that were already on their knees because of the quake. So that was an added, that was, as they say, insult to injury, or on those departments that were already in a difficult situation. So it was very complicated for us to actually, in the beginning, when we had to begin the humanitarian response effort. So that was one factor that hindered or slowed down the response effort and the speed that we could deploy and do what need to be done. One of the other things that need to be outlined is the damage to infrastructure. It was very extensive and intense, but we are going to mainly outline the fact that a lot of health facilities have been damaged or destroyed, and we had a lot of damage to roads. So road access was a real challenge, in the beginning of the response. And we also had one of the main bridges that gives access to Jérémie and Department of Grandas that was seriously damaged, so had to be closed, had to be. So again, all of these things, all of the factors, just to describe and to explain the extent of the damage of this intense earthquake that occurred on August 14. So immediately after, the state of emergency was declared. So there was a mobilization of things and the goods that were already in warehouses, especially in the central at the central level. So we had to we started dispatching teams or people to the affected areas, and also the goods that were there that were already there for the hurricane season, so that we could initiate the humanitarian response. We had a helicopter flight for the assessment. Then that immediate flight was done with the Prime Minister, with the main key representatives of the UN and the main organization, and then sat down and convened on the plan for the response. So the declaration of state of emergency was in effect in 3 most affected departments, which gives us latitude to move swiftly in terms of expenses, in terms of ability to actually undertake action to correct the situation, or to provide solutions. Of course, it was search and rescue, and 6 teams of Haitian firefighters, which are volunteers that flew down from Haitien North, and we had a few more coming from Jacqueline, which is the southeast, and they had a lot of operations going on, and so they could start, providing support and start getting people out of the rubble and the damage damaged buildings. Those crews were there less than 24 hours post impact, but those crews were joined by the international crews, especially the Fairfax crew that was there really quickly after the impact, and together they operated a lot of interventions. And there was about 24 to 25 people that were pulled out of the rubbles and pulled in alive by the rescuers. And again, there were specialized type of rescues that won, because, as I said, the earthquake in a rural area and in the mountainous area, we had some landslides that trapped the people between mountains. So that was very complicated and required specialized intervention, specialized and combined intervention of these various search and rescue crews, so we could get the people alive. Of course, there was a health emergency that associated with an earthquake, and when we say earthquake, we're talking about a lot of trauma. In the immediate phases, the health facilities were after, so there was a triage system was put in place, and there was a transport system also, especially by helicopter, and with the support of the U.S. Coast Guard. So the people that were affected could be taken from those remote areas to specialized hospitals in the south, and also in Port-au-Prince and other specialized hospitals in the country, so they could benefit from surgery and special care that their situation required. So, like I said, it was a very complex situation where it required the intervention of multiple agencies, multiple groups, both local and also international, so the response could be done and make sense. And all of these efforts were ongoing intensively for almost 3 weeks post earthquake. So it's only it's only been about a week from now that all of this effort has been dimming down, and that we're trying to get back to some form of normality. Of course, there is assistance to population. So there's been once the first impact and first action of response were initiated, there was this huge effort actually bring humanitarian assistance in terms of food, non-food items, water, and emergency articles to the populations in need. So we organized when I say we're talking about Protection Civile along all of its partners, organized convoys to actually transport hundreds of tons of food and non-items towards those partners. We also used helicopter flights with assistance of the U.S. Army that was dispatched there, and that really helped us. The U.S. Coast Guard and also the Navy helped us with some maritime transport. And up until now, we can say that up until last week, because I don't have the updated number, up until last week, we can say at least 6 minutes have been assisted, been cared for in terms of humanitarian assistance, direct humanitarian assistance. On this map, we try to show areas where the humanitarian assistance has been in effect. This map is a dynamic map. It's already 2 weeks old, so it needs to be updated. But the interest of this map is the fact that it shows that there have been a lot of actions that are going. There's still a lot of gaps that need to be covered, but there has been a lot going. And as I like to say, Protection Civile is a huge family, and you can see all of the partners that were part of this effort and that contributed to bringing humanitarian assistance to the population, to all of these the affected population. One of the big questions remains the accessibility, because we have those places that are remote and that are with difficult access. So we're reconvening the plan so we can find alternate ways to get there, either helicopter, or sometimes we have to use non-conventional methods of transport, ferry things via motorcycles, or by hand. But the bottom line is that the effort is still ongoing, and we're making sure that we want to make sure most of the people that are in should be covered and receive the minimum that they need. So in terms of international aid, rapidly we had an immediate injection of funds via what we call the CRF, which is UN based, which is handled by the UN. But I will let Bruno jump in on that. I'm not gonna elaborate that. The CRIF, which is the parametric insurance for disaster for which Haiti is a part of, and which Haiti benefits whenever we are struck by a crisis. And this year, and because of this crisis, we have hit the ceiling in terms of disbursements by the CRIF. So they allowed us 40 million. The European Union pledged immediately 3 million, and USAID jumped in with a pledge of 32 million. And that 32 million was an added value to all of the efforts that were already ongoing. But again, I will let Tim Callaghan, which is part of the panel, elaborate more on that further down during the presentation. One of the other main point that needs to be outlined is the fact that there was an outpour by a bunch or many countries that brought NFIs, that brought medicine, and they brought everything that we had asked, because we had established a list of needs, and this list has been respected in terms of what was being brought, and they helped us with the coordination work, which was very good, and that also helped us sort all of that out, receive it in a properly manner, and move forward in transporting and distributing all of that aid on the field. So we have a list of countries that have brought that aid, that support directly to Protection Civile, and we, Protection Civile, have been transporting all of that aid, and we're still in that process of distributing those goods to the affected population. One of the extremely important points is the solidarity that we have noticed, and the individual solidarity. And when I say individual, one of striking points that happened is the fact that one of the islands that is neighboring the department of Grandas was completely isolated in the beginning of the crisis. So in the neighboring cities, there were people that, they rented a boat, got food supplies on the boat, and brought it to their fellow citizens on that island. So that was a big sign of solidarity. And in my humble opinion, that's one of the positive points that I could say that came out of this disaster. Of course, there was a lot of, as I said before, an outpour of humanitarian, charitable, and philanthropic institutions that came in on board with their own supplies. And there was also a huge action by the private sector through AJACA. AJACA is the institution that does the interface between the Protection Civile and the private sector. And the private sector has been very generous and very active this time around in terms of supplies and donations to the affected population. So again, solidarity was key, and that was a good point in terms of humanitarian response. One of the key points, and again, I'm not gonna dwell and say make too much details about it. I will leave that to Bruno. Is the flash appeal that was done. So in terms of immediate assessment, so the needs by sectors, and that flash appeal, which amounts to $183 million. I will let Bruno talk about it. But the reason why I mentioned it is because in the immediate aftermath of such a disaster, there are a lot of needs that arise. We need to figure out which are the priority, where the priorities are, what is the real priority, what are the urgent needs, what are the real urgent needs. And we have done an assessment that led us by departments see exactly where the real needs are. And in the Department of NIP, we have realized that temporary shelter is the biggest need or requirement for that department, and that is the most, I would say, urgent need that the population would require in this area. In the Department of Grandas, it's temporary shelter is a real problem for the people, but their request mostly lies on water. They need water, and they need water in the Department of same for temporary shelter is biggest need and biggest request. So again, real to wrap up, I would say up until now we still are going on with the active follow-up of the humanitarian response operations, even though we are operating in a very complex situation because of security issues and security matters. But we still are moving on. We still have an integrated work in terms of planning, especially in regards to recovery with the sectors, because we want everyone to be on board to work, but also we want them to work towards the real needs, so that the real needs can be addressed, so we can have a correct impact in terms of what we need to do. One of the key points is the lessons learned. So we already are working on the after action review, and we're working on that with all of our partners. And right now, Protection Civil is also gearing in terms of gearing towards the next event, because the hurricane season is still active and it's far from being over. And actually, we are in a very, I would say, active portion of the hurricane season, because since August 14, we have quote unquote dodged 4 major hurricanes that have gone, that have gone sideways. But at any given moment, we could have an issue with the hurricane season. So we have to gear and prepare for the next event. And so I'm going to stop there and certainly be open to questions and answers. But I want to tell you that Protection Civil has been doing a tremendous effort, and why I put the picture of all volunteers working on the field, looking resolutely to actually help and assist the population. This is what we have been doing. We will continue to do it, especially with the support and the of all of our partners on the ground. Thank you very much for your attention, and I will stand by for questions and answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chandler. Now we're going to move to Mr. Callahan.
Great, thank you, Ms. Charles, and thank you, Jerry, for that incredible detailed explanation of the response. Again, my name is Tim Callaghan. I was the disaster team lead. I'd like to kind of follow on to a couple of things Jerry just said, and maybe start with lessons that we've learned, USAID, from years past. I was the DART team leader 11 years ago in the major Haiti earthquake. Jerry just talked about, for us, what's so important is that obviously the responsibility for the response is the government of Haiti and DPC. Our role as USAID is to be in support of their vision. And as Jerry outlined, the needs that DPC outlined. Also, other lessons we had learned that we implemented in this response, we had staff already on the ground. We didn't have that in 2010. We had staff, emergency staff, who were working with Dr. Chandler and his team on that Saturday. Other lessons we had learned that we implemented from 11 years ago, we had relief supplies, humanitarian supplies already on the ground, both food and non-food. We didn't do that in 2010, but that was a lesson. So from our side, obviously working with Dr. Chandler from day one, we looked at, as Jerry just said, what were the needs that USAID could support DPC and the government of Haiti right away. So as Jerry indicated, one of the first needs that we looked at was an urban search and rescue team. So the earthquake happened on Saturday. The team that we activated that came down and supported the effort was from Fairfax County. We have, which is a certified team under the United Nations International Search and Rescue Advisory Group. Because AID is the lead federal agency for emergencies overseas. So the other group we work closely with, and we've worked closely with them in other emergencies, and that's the Coast Guard, with the great work that they did in medical evacuations. We also made the request for the unique capability of our colleagues, Admiral Fowler and his team for DOD, for air asset military support. And again, that was in very close coordination with Jerry. Jerry and I flew on several flights along with Admiral Davids. Again, basing our flights, our military taskings that AID did to DOD for the flights to get out to areas that were identified by DPC, Dr. Chandler and his team. And a lot of that support was air support, but there was also maritime support, where there were materials that were delivered to the Jeremy area by ship, which again transported a large amount of food. The other thing that USAID has provided, so again, we looked at it in steps. What was the initial support we could provide? Again, we looked at urban search and rescue, support from the Coast Guard, support from DOD with military aircraft. After that, we looked at relief supplies to complement that was already there based on the needs and the priorities outlined by DPC and the government of Haiti. We brought in more supplies from our warehouse in Miami. And as Dr. Chandler indicated, the top priority that we had heard and seen was material related to shelter. So we brought in plastic sheeting, we brought in shelter repair kits, we brought in health materials. We are, again, and then, so as we brought in supplies that were identified, then we, with the initial $32 million that Dr. Chandler talked about, then AID looked at who could provide the support. So again, our main groups that we work with are groups already on the ground, the United Nations, and non-government organizations. So groups like the World Food Program that we have provided support, financial support for food and for logistics. Because for us, we looked at, and again, in talking to Dr. Chandler and DPC, what were the major areas that we were going to focus on based on the government of Haiti priorities and DPC priorities. Shelter was the top priority, food assistance, health-related issues, water, sanitation, hygiene, logistics, and as Jerry talked about, also supplies. One of the lessons that I saw from 11 years ago that worked well with the groups on the ground, whether it was DPC, AID, State Department, Coast Guard, non-government organizations, a group like Mission of Hope, that a lot of the food that got out to Jeremy on the ship from DOD, just everything was closely coordinated. The great work with the UN, again, with the World Food Program. It was very difficult for I think at first, early on, with the transport of the convoys. There were certainly some challenges early on, but I think the close coordination and the support from the police to get those convoys that delivered, again, what I have is over 300 truckloads of medical supplies, food relief items was critical. From our side, the DART is actually in the process of standing down, the disaster assistance response team today, but the emergency work continues. And so what we will now do is transition. So the DART was on the ground around 7 weeks. We supported the UNDAC team. We worked closely with our partners, but now we're transitioning to our 11-person team on the ground. We will continue to monitor the activities. We will continue to make field visits. We will continue to look at other areas we could potentially support. As I mentioned, the $32 million is the initial support from AID at this time. I can't emphasize enough how the close coordination and communication between any partner, any country, and DPC is critical. And that's what happened. Again, as the government of Haiti requested air support, we had brought in experts. So part of our disaster assistance response team was not only experts in urban search and rescue, it was experts in operations, it was experts in food security, it was experts on civil assistance. We had individuals who worked, again, very closely with our DoD colleagues, Admiral David and his team. I was in close contact with Admiral Fowler. We would have constant communication, coordination, looking at what Dr. Chandler and DPC were seeing as priorities and how could we support that with the assets that we had on the ground. Certainly, for us, the challenge of logistics, I think, is one, as Dr. Chandler mentioned. We looked at every avenue. We've supported groups to rent boats. We've supported trucks and obviously air support as well. So the disaster assistance response team, as I said, the emergency work continues. We will continue to monitor the work that has been implemented so far. We will continue to work with Dr. Chandler and his team. As he mentioned, obviously for us, the shelter piece is so important right now because tomorrow will be the busiest month of hurricane season, hands down. We've seen so many storms out there, and thankfully they've turned north and they have not had impacts on the Eastern Caribbean or on Hispaniola. But historically, in my 20 years in Costa Rica, I've seen a lot of storms that have caused negative impacts, including Haiti in October. So we're monitoring that closely with all our contacts in all the countries in the Caribbean. So from our standpoint, again, I think it's that close relationship with all partners, as Dr. Chandler mentioned, working together, having cluster systems in place, having groups that continually talk and discuss, and when there are problems or issues, whether it's with a convoy and so forth, looking at solutions to move forward and get supplies out, what we call the last mile distribution. Getting material to Lakai is one thing, but ensuring that the materials then can get out to those areas most impacted, hardest to reach is critical, and that's something that USAID focused on quite a lot. And obviously, as we've heard from Dr. Chandler, again, this was a very different response from 2010. This was a lot more challenging, I think, in some areas to get to hard to reach areas and get materials out there quickly. And so again, that's our, we're very thankful for the cooperation, coordination, both with the UN, Bruno and his team, and also with Dr. Chandler. But like I said, from the USAID side, we will remain monitoring on the emergency, and that's what our role is. So for BHA, the Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance, our focus is immediate life-saving efforts, again, at the request of a government, and that's what we've been doing since the 14th of August. So I think I'll stop there and certainly be open to any questions that folks have. And again, I think the panelists and Jackie, thanks as always. Great to see you. Thanks so much.
Great to see you. Thank you so much, Tim. Now we're going to go to Bruno Le Marquis.
Can you hear?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you, Jackie. Greetings, everybody. Greetings to my fellow panelists. Greetings. Thank you to FYU for the invitation. And first, I want to really thank Jerry and really highlight the great work done by DPC during the course of this response, and also highlight the very good collaboration we had with USAID and the DART team. I will not touch too much on the immediate relief operation because it has been very well covered by Tim and Jerry, except to say that right now the earthquake is one layer of complexity. But if you are looking for a definition of multidimensional crisis, visit Haiti right now. It's damn complex. And I also accept to say that the UN has been heavily involved from day one, from the 14th of August, first and foremost to working with DPC hand in hand. And we have been working for years with DPC. And my second tour in Haiti started in '98, the year when basically DPC started. And I remember they were under the attic of the Ministry of Interior. So what a great institutional development story. You are way far from where you started, and it's great to see all the good progress. And also as UN, we have been working very closely with the many partners who have been engaged in the search and rescue and the humanitarian effort, including USAID. We have a lot of UN, parts of the UN involved in the response. We have OCHA, of course, coordinating the Office for Coordination of Humanitarian Assistance. They had also deployed a very robust UNDAC team who work with the other emergency teams, including the DART. I will not name everybody because it will be too long, but just a few. So the three biggies have been really WFP on the food side and on the logistics, IOM, UNICEF. So these are the three biggies for the large distribution that have been made with DPC. But also we have UNFPA, we have UNOPS, we have UNDP, we have UN Women, we have FAO, and many more. And also BINU, the political office, has been involved on helping with security arrangements and also access issue, including in gang-controlled areas. Also for you to know, in addition to DPC coordinating through the CUN and through the CUD, the humanitarian architecture in Haiti is made of, in other countries, it's clusters, and here it's sectors. And that's very important. The humanitarian clusters, they are led by the UN usually. In Haiti, we have sectors. That means they are co-led each time by a ministry or a national institution with the support of one UN agency. And that this makes a whole of a difference in terms of national leadership. Also, as Jerry mentioned, we have launched this flash appeal, $187 million on the 25th of August. And so far, it's more or less, it's above 1/3 funded now. But now cash is really becoming a problem for some of the priority response needs, including the one Tim has just mentioned, including sheltering. So money is needed right now, money is needed later, but money is needed right now. You can find all our information, a lot of information on the weekly SITREP that is published by OCHA, which you can find on ReliefWeb/Haiti. But I want to talk about three things here. One is, as has been mentioned by the two previous speakers, the lessons learned from 2010 and how it is informing the response, the early recovery efforts and what I call some of the races against time, and then a quick update on where we are on the reconstruction process in terms of process. On the lessons learned, we just had this morning, the UN, we just launched this morning a series of 3 webinars. And I can send the link, it's in French, but you are all welcome to the next one next week. And it's all about 2010. This morning was about, in French, l'espace, yeah, the space, the physical reconstruction, aménagement du territoire, planning, zoning, resilient infrastructure, disaster risk reduction. And it was a fascinating discussion. Next week will be about governance. What governance lessons were learned from 2010? Who decided? How are decisions made? And the third one will be on transparency and accountability, including in the use of funds. My spiel on lessons learned since this earthquake happened is that we need to walk the talk in supporting and respecting national leadership. And we see this response, there is very strong national leadership at the highest level and through the DPC. We need to support and respect the coordination arrangement that are in place. And this, Jerry can attest, it's a challenge. It's a big challenge for DPC and for other places where things to be coordinated. It's not everybody that is playing game with this coordination. And that's bad habits in Haiti, old habits. It's about supporting everything national actors, national institutions, national systems, and working through them. It's to rely to the extent possible on Haitian knowledge and expertise so that we have a response that is contextualized. It's about supporting the local production and the local private sector. And it's about, and this was discussed at length this morning, avoiding gaps between the short-term temporary measures and some of the decisions that are taken early on, and then longer-term solutions. There are decisions sometimes taken during the emergency phase that can have very serious unintended consequences for the future. And also we need to avoid that temporary solution remain temporary for years. So that's, these are in brief, yeah. And we are going to build, because apparently it doesn't exist, we are going to build a repository of everything we can find on those lessons learned, accessible to everybody. My second point is on early recovery. So it's absolutely necessary to go at scale and with speed on some of what I call the races against time. And for some of them, it's a matter of the next weeks and next months before we move into full-fledged, into another phase with much larger ambitions. And I will just, there are several races against time. I will just mention quickly 3 of them. Next Monday is back to school, 900 schools damaged or destroyed, 250 kids needing to go back to school. So you know all the story, 2019, 2020, nobody wants those kids to have a third year with out of school. So that's, and the challenges are huge, huge, huge. And we are, Haiti is nowhere ready in terms of absorbing those 250,000 kids in semi-permanent structure, which was the goal, because you don't do that over a couple of weeks. So it's about setting up those structures. It's about resuming school feeding. It's about ensuring psychological support to children and teachers. And it's also about resolving the issue with the money. Some families have lost their livelihood and their income, so they are not able to pay, especially the 70% of schools that are private. So that's the biggest race against time. The second one is the planting season. The fall planting season, many farmers have lost either their land, literally they've lost their land because of landslide, and they can have lost their crops, their assets, some of their livestock, and so on. So if they cannot get back on their feet for this season, they will run into trouble, they will be decapitalized, and they might decide to move on. And the food security, which was already not in a good position in Haiti, was the overall food security, numbers in Haiti are more or less equivalent to those of South Sudan and the Central African Republic. So that's not a place where you want to be, but it's a place where Haiti is currently. The food security numbers, we know it already because what's called the IPC calculation, that's the index on food security. It has just been completed for this current period. They are going up. They are going up. And they're going up by 25% in the earthquake affected areas. So it's close to 1 million people in the south, food insecure in what we call IPCs 3 and 4. So resuming livelihood, agricultural activities and so on is absolutely and quickly is key. And the third race against time is this issue of internal displacement. Government, based on 2010 lessons, decided, good decision, not to have camps. Yeah, people stay where you are and help with assistance to rebuild. However, between this and the reality, some people have moved on, and there have been spontaneous, not very large number, but some numbers of spontaneous sites and regroupings. So it's key to prevent more people to move, and some are moving because it's by opportunity. Sometimes it's to get closer to humanitarian distributions. So it's key to prevent more people to move, and it's even more important to assist them to go back, to get assisted to go back to their places of origin as quickly as possible. So it's a delicate balance because people are on site, there are minimum standards in humanitarian assistance, they need to be assisted. But you need to find the balance between providing assistance and really helping them to move on. So IOM and DGPC are very, very involved with that. And my last point is a quick update on reconstruction. 2 days after the quake on the 16th of August, I received a letter from the government. 2 days after, I received a letter informing the international system through me that there will be one and one only evaluation for reconstruction needs, that there will be one reconstruction plan, and asking the activation of a global agreement that exists between the UN, the World Bank, and the EU. 2 days after the earthquake. This is remarkable. This process has gone very fast with very strong national leadership, with a very strong engagement of many, many, many institutions and ministries. There has been a very good alignment of all international partners to support this national process. For those of you who were there at the time, there were many lessons learned from the 2010 PDNA, which was a story. So now the process is almost completed in terms of needs assessment, in terms of infrastructure sector, social sectors, productive sector, and what we call human impact. All this is being put together. The total damage and loss and needs will be above $2 billion, most likely, and 50% of it will be housing. So the next phase will be to consolidate all of that for the government to develop the recovery vision and recovery plan with prioritization of needs. And then between now, the end of the year, December, January, to do everything that can be done to advocate and mobilize international support, domestic support, diaspora support, private sector support to contribute financially to this reconstruction. Thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any question you have. Thank you.
Well, thank you all. You know, when you mentioned the PDNA, Bruno, because I was there in 2010 and I was there a day after this quake, although in 2010, I arrived less than 24 hours after the quake. And, you know, and I've seen some of the lessons learned play out. While some people feel that things have moved too slow or things haven't happened. I heard yesterday on a panel I was on, but I'll just say as some of my observation as a reporter before I go into the questions is that just as in 2010, when we saw CNN and mostly women that were driving these earth-moving equipment to rescue people before the international community arrived and the search and rescue teams, I saw with this earthquake, Haitians themselves. In fact, Jerry, I was surprised to see that the firefighters from Cap Haitien were basically on the ground, within hours. And it was because of that organization that among Haitians themselves, that a lot of people were able to get to help very quickly. Senator Foucault, who's from the South, he took his plane and was flying people out. I wrote a story about, young Haitian doctors recently graduated, came and borrowed a tent and turned it into a makeshift clinic. So we saw a lot of this, and a lot of this was very organic. And Tim, by the time that Admiral Fowler's team was on the ground, basically the structure was already there for them to just put up their tents and just do a little bit of tweaking, and all of a sudden we had this major international response that was there. And I think the biggest lesson learned I also saw was that this time around the international community was not telling Haiti it's my way or the highway. That was very clear with the PDNA experience. That was very clear what we saw with the tent cities. And I think that this time around, and perhaps it's because Dr. Chandler, who you had the response, the experience in responses to current interim Prime Minister Ariel Henry. I remember his job after 2010 was to go around and count the bodies, and it was the first time Haiti had been hit with this, and they had to arrest judges to do this, and people, took off. But so being there and seeing with cholera and how Haiti wanted to take the lead, all of that sort of formed this. But Jerry, you and I talked about this on the ground. There was also a sense that the disaster responders were not, as large as they were. And I wonder if you can talk about this in terms of how did this affect the response? Because as reporters too, we heard people say they've forgotten about us. I haven't seen anybody. So help us understand, why were people feeling that way, that they had been neglected or that they hadn't sensed government yet while you guys were responding?
Okay, there are multiple ways to address this specific topic, because of course you in a situation like this, as I said, which is very complex because you have to handle a lot of logistics, you have to take into account multiple other factors such as security, et cetera, which all of these factors are, they hinder the performance or the capacity that you actually have, which is already limited. That's for one. But also, there is also the fact that this quake happened, like I said, in a rural setting, and the disaster and the effects were widespread. We're talking about a radius that's, I don't know, over 100 kilometers from the epicenter. So that means, and in the immediate aftermath, you had difficulty access because you had, landslides and so forth and so on. So it was really a big challenge to actually get there and actually assist everyone, if I would say it like this. Of course, there was also the fact that, in the beginning, we started working on coordination, but coordination took also a bit of time to actually install and make sense, because what happens is that everyone wants to go where it's sexy to be. Everyone wants to go to Lekai, everyone wants to go to Jérémie, everyone wants to go to the mainstream cities, whereas the biggest issues happened in what we call the backcountry, the forgotten places. We're talking about a small town like Maniche. We're talking about Wozo or Pistel, which are smaller towns, but where you have the extent of damage is much more widespread and more important. So again, how do you prioritize? How do you choose, quote unquote, which you address and which you do not, and how do you move forward doing it? And especially due to the fact that we also had another issue. Like I said, we had that tropical storm that occurred about 48 hours after the impact. So getting there was, we started launching convoys and having people on the ground with and again, but once we started doing that, the problem was that again, you had a lot of places where people were starting to grow angry and antsy, and you had issues getting, for instance, getting to Lekai on the way to Lekai, we started having roadblocks and of people, stopping our convoys because they say that, they're on the way and they need, to be addressed and so forth and so on. So all of these factors, when you put them all together, they hinder, or they become a problem in terms of the performance that you could have or that you can have in terms of immediate response. Now, that is one of the ways I could say, one of the explanations I would have for this. But what I can say also is the fact that ever since, there's been, once we got started on, all the mechanisms were in place and we got all the players, on the ground, and we figured it out. When I say figured it out, we knew what was going on and we had a better idea of what was going on. We started using all that we had: road access, helicopters, maritime way, and so forth and so on. And with the support of not only the UN, the UNDAC team, the DOT team, and the US Army, we started moving everywhere at once. When I say everywhere, we started to reach those hard to reach places, those quote unquote forgotten places, so we could have that impact, so that no one could say they were left behind. So we literally did we literally chose in the first week to do a blanket response, so we could spread around and have as much as possible. The second thing is also the perception, because the population tends to have the perception that it's up to the state to actually do the response, whereas we work in a network. We do have a network of partners and agencies and NGOs that work with us and in collaboration with us. So if an NGO comes in and makes a distribution, and this time around, I think that the feedback was positive in the sense that we had a grip, quote unquote, we had the information overall of who was doing what and where, and we could direct them in terms of their action. But the problem remains that if the population doesn't see the yellow, the orange uniform of DPC, they tend to say that the state does not react. Whereas if an NGO gets there and we tell them to go there and do that distribution, well, the response is done, and it is part of a mapping of response. So again, it's also about perception, and that perception also varies, and it takes a lot of education for that, so people can understand that response is a global, is an holistic phenomenon. It's not just one institution, it's a multitude of institutions that get together inside of the National Emergency Operations Center, what we call the KUN. We take the decisions and then we dispatch and we work together so we can actually operate that response.
Okay, thank you. Bruno, last time you and I spoke, it was the same week of the migration crisis on the border. Half of the 800,000 people affected had not received assistance. This included children who still need to be able to go to school. The biggest challenge was logistics. Gangs had basically, shut down that or block the access from the south. Can you tell us in terms of what is the situation right now in terms of being able to get assistance? And then my second question to you, we are in the midst of hurricane season, and the thing that I fear and that was very real to me and my colleagues is that churches and schools, buildings that normally would serve as shelters, they're downed or they're damaged. Today, if a hurricane, God forbid, hits next week, where do the people in the South have to go? What's the plan?
Thank you. I think I will gladly pass the second question to Jerry because he's dealing with that every day. But it's a challenge. Yesterday, I was with the Minister of Education talking about some of the schools that are still standing, are serving for those spontaneous regrouping of people, So almost as temporary shelter. At the time when next Monday, in 3 days, it's the reopening of school with much less school, that can function. So what will happen this weekend to move these people so that kids can get back to school on Monday? It's a layer of challenge after challenge with this. It's one of the races against time I mentioned, back to school. On the coverage, we estimate that about 50% of the people in need have received some sort of assistance so far. But the bulk of it, as Jerry has said, the bulk of it has first taken place in town, in cities, in accessible areas by road, and there has been issues with that. There has been tension. There has been security issue. There has been some instances of rioting because people wanted to get something. So this has been served. What has been unserved are the more remote area, the hard to reach areas. Some of it was covered with the US assistance with the military assets. But basically, each time I've been to the affected area, I try to go deep to talk to some of the people in the section communal, so in the remote localities, and basically you cannot find many people who have received anything. Some have tried to go to town where there are distribution sites. There's been no distribution in their location, very, very little. So some of them have tried to go to some of the distribution sites near roads or towns, and they say they didn't get because it's organized in such a way that first come, first serve. There is some bullying. There is some, then some people are smarter than others or better connected, and then they get the stuff, and then they want to sell the stuff. So the big challenge now, the big challenge is how to reach the other 250,000 people who have not yet been receiving something. So DPC, Jerry can talk about that. DPC is now implementing since last week a new strategy, which is to have a granular understanding of what's going on in those remote areas. Where do we stand? To really mobilize, to have a very clear understanding and connect with all the local organizations, local authorities, have their phone numbers, yeah, so that you know who you can count on to make this the last mile, using donkeys, using motorbikes. And then all the humanitarian partners are now reorganized themselves with the CUD, yeah, in the 3 departments, to organize this next round of distribution at much more specific, precise. It's almost a door-to-door, so that people who didn't get anything get something. You're on mute.
Jerry, if you could briefly tell us an idea in terms of the school issue, and then I'm going to move to you, Tim. I want to ask about the bridge in Jeremy, because that question has come up a couple of times. But Jerry, what are we doing about shelter in schools?
Well, in regards to the whole shelter issue, it still is an issue because, as Bruno just mentioned, most of our shelters are schools, and a lot of those schools, about 60 to 65% of them, are currently dysfunctional, and those that are still functional are being used as shelters right now. So, again, it's a very tricky and complex situation. We're trying to address it from various angles, but again, it's still complicated because we had an alternative. Because we had a program that we started with IOM where we encourage people to actually not just go to shelters, but actually seek shelter with family or people that they know. But again, right now, since all of these areas have been affected, a lot of those alternate shelters, this alternate sheltering system is not very effective or cannot be actually used. So right now, what we are looking at is basically trying to accelerate the evaluation process, try to see where the low-hanging fruits are in terms of repair for some of those shelters, so those repairs can be done, and race against time so that those repairs can be done, and try to get as much space, quote unquote, as possible, so that can be used as shelters. But aside from that, because if we would have to wait for reconstruction and so forth and so on with the hurricane season, we would be caught off short with a problem. So right now, that's where we're at with this problem. We're trying to tackle it with the sector that is involved, which is education. And again, it's very complex because not only because of the not only because of the shelter problem, but also because of school opening also. So again, we're in discussions with some of the donors and some of the technical partners to try to find the solutions, because there's not one solution to that problem. It's a multifaceted problem. Over.
Okay, thank you. Tim, when you said that DART was shutting down, I was really concerned, because what we're seeing and we're hearing is that they are still challenges that exist. I mean, the airlifts that were provided by Southcom, I mean, they were literally life-saving because they were able to get into many of these hard to reach areas, even if there are still rural areas that are still out there. So I'm very curious in terms of, you know, USAID and that decision. And then I also want to present to you this question, and that's in our chat, and it says, does anyone know of a concrete plan to rebuild the bridge to Jeremy? WFP has said they will begin work by December 15th, but I don't believe there's a firm commitment. Supplies are only trickling in there, and the General Hospital is already cutting back operations due to a lack of fuel for their generators. The overall hardship is worsening the security situation as gangs have begun commandeering resources and threatening NGOs they believe have supplies they're not sharing. And I'm throwing that at you, Tim, because at one point I heard conversations that there was some discussion about possibly a Bailey Bridge, or you know, some temporary fix in order to allow supplies to go in. And again, these challenges, but yet DART is destroying down. If you can comment on that.
Yeah, let me address the first question. You know, again, with the disaster team transitioning, that's the word I call it, to the team that we have on the ground, because we have a 12-person team on the ground. So there were 7 people remaining on the disaster team. These are experts with different skill sets. And again, as I stated earlier, even though the disaster team is transitioning back to our humanitarian team that was there before, working with Jerry and doing humanitarian work in food and other areas, the emergency work continues. The work that USAID is supporting with this initial $32 million, the activities range from 3 to 12 months. You know, for example, one of the field hospitals we were supporting with International Medical Corps, that's a 3-month program, but some of the other activities are continuing for months. We have a 10 to 12 person team. I'd have to double check the numbers on that. People who will continue to go out to the field, people who will continue to monitor the investment that the US government has made in coordination with Jerry and DPC on, again, shelter programs, water, sanitation, hygiene programs, health programs, the supports of WP in food and so forth. So I wouldn't say, you know, the DART is transitioning to the humanitarian team. And again, Jackie, this is a lesson we learned from 11 years ago. We did not have a large humanitarian team there in Haiti. It was mostly focused on food at that point. Now we have experts who can do food and non-food already there. We have several individuals who will be, whose job will just to be what we call activity managers of the 13 awards that the disaster assistance response team has implemented. So that work will continue. So it isn't like, you know, we're packing our bags and going home. It's a transition to, you know, just like the transition as we worked with Dr. Chandler and DPC, when the urban search and rescue phase transitioned out, you know, in coordination with Jerry, that's when our USAR team departed, and we continued with our phase with DOD and Admiral Fowler and his team. And then we moved into the phase of signing agreements with, you know, the UN and non-government organizations to put money in their hands so they could provide emergency assistance throughout the country. Related to the bridge, again, my understanding is that ministry, you know, I was up at the bridge, the Ministry of Public Works is looking at, and there's one, my understanding is that there is a plan for stabilizing the bridge. There's work with Miyamoto International. I don't know exactly where that stands right now. And I know there's resources to repair the bridge. Again, that's, you know, work that the Minister of Public Works, I think with the World Bank and IDB was looking at. So that's not an area where aid is focusing on, but I'm aware that the government is looking at those solutions to repair the bridge. And again, I believe that the main focus was to try and stabilize the bridge as quickly as possible. And I think the original plan when I was still in Port-au-Prince was sometime by mid-October, but I'd have to get back to you on where that stands unless Jerry has an update on that. Thank you.
Okay, great. We have a lot of great questions, and we've got only a few more minutes. So I'm just going to go through some of these questions, and if you guys can just give us, you know, just a quick answer on this. So we have one question here. Following Hurricane Matthew, aid was distributed primarily to population centers, but not to the rural areas in between. For example, aid was distributed in Les Cayes and Port Salut along National Route 2, but no food or shelter was distributed in Quebec. The only aid distribution was a limited number of kitchen kits from IOM. The remaining relief work was left to small NGOs operating in the rural areas for which they weren't prepared or equipped. How will the response differ this time around? So far, it appears to be the same situation. Again, Jerry, I think this speaks to the difficulty of getting aid into some of those really remote areas. I'm hearing Bruno says you guys are working on addressing that. I mean, can we be able to see change in the next week or two?
Absolutely, absolutely. Change in the sense that there is a different dynamic, and because certainly we probably are going to use the similar mechanisms, but we're going to make sure that the accountability is there, and that there is. I mean, we ensure performance. If we're gonna, for instance, in certain settings, we will get to use some structure that's already in place in terms of NGOs or whatnot, but we're going to make sure that those NGOs get the job done and that they report to us. And this is one of the things that we have been able to accomplish this time around in terms of coordination and accountability, in terms of direct contact with these institutions that work with us.
Great. Someone wants to know, 6 weeks out, what is the most pressing identified medical needs so that they can adjust their efforts? I know after the quake, a lot of orthopedic material was needed. Do we have an idea today what those needs are?
Well, quickly, I can say for the health sector, oh, you wanted to go on? Okay, I'll jump in on that. So real quick, the immediate response was orthopedic. There was a lot of need for orthopedic resources, but at this stage, the issue, I would say, more or less, it is taken care of. We still have a few EMT teams that are out there in various towns that are, complementing or assisting the local teams in terms of provision of medical service. So right now we're getting back to, a month out, we're getting back to more or less, quote unquote, the normal, regular issues that arise from a medical standpoint. So the real issue right now is to be able to provide and assure that the continuity of services is there, because a lot of these institutions were affected. A few of them are destroyed. So right now we have to make sure that we continue to provide them with the resources they need, and we make sure that the personnel has what it needs so they can actually keep providing basic medical services in those rural areas.
Great.
Bruno, and Jacqueline, if I can interrupt,
yes,
on our side, we did provide medical kits that were requested. These are the WHO specified kits with material that the government asked for. So those were provided. We also, again, from USAID's viewpoint, have provided a lot of support to PAHO that works with MOH quite a bit, Ministry of Health.
Tim, while I have you up, the $32 million that USAID provided, there was when we wrote about that, there was a lot of response from people. Oh, that's just to pay for the military. That money is going in. Can you give us a little bit more details about
Sure.
that $32 million and where it's going?
Yeah, so right now, between the military and AID, the figure is 44 million. So 12 of that was for the DoD support, and 32 million is going to support. Again, part of it went to the Urban Search and Rescue Team we brought in, and then 13 awards. So IOM, for example, someone mentioned IOM. IOM is a partner of ours. We pre-positioned supplies with them before this earthquake, which was a lesson from 11 years ago. We're supporting the World Food Program for food and logistics. We're supporting a variety of non-government organizations, CORE and others we're working with Mercy Corps. And again, so the sectors that were identified by the government in coordination with Jerry, shelter, food issues, health, water, for example, health, there was one emergency medical team that was coordinated with MOH that was set up in an area that was requested. So for 3 months, that was paid for by us, International Medical Corps, providing support to, I think, 20 communities. Water, sanitation, hygiene are other sectors that we're supporting with a variety of partners, logistics. And again, we provided materials to IOM. So again, one of the things is we had material pre-positioned, which was used right away. That was a lesson, right? But then IOM was concerned. So we brought in more materials because we're still concerned, as Jerry mentioned earlier, for hurricane season. We're not even in October 1st yet. So the initial 32, that's why I say initial 32 at this point, plus the 12 million from DoD, between DoD and ourselves, it was a $44 million response. to date. That's the initial response right now, which we
Thank you.
continue to assess and look at other opportunities. Thank you.
Bruno, you talk about the multidimensional crisis that's Haiti, these crises, they existed before August 14. But everyone that has had your job, the biggest challenge they always talk about is not just getting the international community to provide aid, but to give, aid for the long term, development aid instead of the emergency aid. How do we get the international community to invest in Haiti so that when the next earthquake comes, the next major hurricane, the country is better situated to respond?
How many hours do you give me?
No, I'm giving you 2 minutes.
A lot in Haiti is about addressing the symptoms. A lot of aid is coming to Haiti to address the symptoms. There is an average 1 billion a year of foreign aid coming to Haiti. 1 billion, that's a lot. But a lot of that is going to the symptoms. It's going to humanitarian aid. It's going to, some of the security issues. And at the end of the day, until and unless Haiti will fix for itself with the help of its friends, but for itself, some of what I call the Gordian knot. So the deep-rooted structural issues. There are deep-rooted structural issues that explain why Haiti is going in circle. Haiti is going in circle for at least 25 years in this current phase of its history. And if you look at the development indicators, governance indicators, gender gaps indicators, most of them are falling down. And for some of them, Haiti is reaching the bottom. For example, on some of the economic indicators, Haiti is reaching the bottom of global world indicators. So until and unless those deep-rooted causes, which if you ask me, which are the top three, it's impunity, it's corruption, and it's the economic model of Haiti, and a lot of collusions between economic, politics, and violence. The rest, we are running around the problem, including on humanitarian aid. And this leads to a lot of deficits in terms of governance. And if you take the issue of disasters, disaster risk reduction, it's all about governance. So without strong governance in the country, some of the long-term issues will continue going into circle. And as far as disasters is concerned, it means we will continue responding to disasters in terms of instead of avoiding disasters.
Tim, you've been around for a while. You've seen these disasters. Is he on the right track in terms of the challenges of getting developmental aid versus emergency assistance?
Yeah, I also think that one of the things that related, which I've seen improve in the 11 years, and this was mentioned, I think, earlier, from my standpoint, this response was Haiti-led. DPC, obviously that didn't happen 11 years ago, right? A lot of people looked at lessons learned, but I think from the beginning, with all the challenges that DPC and the government faced with security and so forth, what I do feel good about in this emergency response is that the coordination, obviously, between the U.S. military, between partners, between the UN, as Bruno said, was really closely coordinated with the government through DPC. Certainly there were still a lot of challenges, and I think the first week that came out. I think there's a lot of groups that were well-intentioned that first week, but if a distribution, trying to go one truck alone, if it's not coordinated well, you can see that's when trucks are going to have potential problems and so forth. But the thing I feel good about, at least on the emergency side, that's what I can address, is that I thought the coordination was so much better. I think there was really, again, certainly, and Jerry and I have talked about this, when you see, as he mentioned, when, I was at a distribution not too long ago with Mercy Corps. It's really important for us, the partners that the U.S. government's going to fund, that, it's coordinated. And even if it's not Jerry at the national level, we had people at that distribution. So there were people, as Jerry said, with the yellow shirts on, because again, I think that's so important to demonstrate. And the work that one group did was with local folks, local leaders. That's what you have to do. You have to make sure anything you're doing is coordinated, not only at the national level, but with the local level, to ensure, they know the communities better than we do. And so I think that was so much better in this response that I saw than 11 years ago.
Great, thank you. We're having a question here about the African swine fever. Will it have any effect on the recovery or areas in the South? Jerry or Bruno, do we know yet? Are we seeing any?
I don't have the exact detail. I know that Haiti is on high alert, very high alert. There's been, the UN is involved through two organizations working on both sides of the border with the two ministries of agriculture. I don't have details as to what is the current situation of the fever in Haiti.
Okay, Bruno, while I still have you, COVID-19 and vaccinations, we know it started just before this earthquake. It's been slow. Specifically, is it happening in the South?
What should I say? It's not really happening anywhere so far. There are a lot of efforts, but I was checking again the number this morning for the Americas, and Haiti is at 0.3% vaccination overall. Yeah. Okay. So it's about, I think it's about 50,000 people have been vaccinated. First one shot. Yeah. So south or no south, I think it's the same in the country. There is a lot going on to open vaccination centers. There is a lot that needs to be done to scale up the communication campaign. My next meeting in 15 minutes is with the Minister of Health, but it's complicated. It's complicated, but I don't think it has I don't think it's an added layer of complexity for the earthquake response.
Okay, great. Jerry, this is a question, but it feels more like some advice, where we have attendee who's basically thanking you all for this presentation, but is asking how is the local population getting the clear information about these efforts and not feeling like they are being neglected, or how can they feel that they can trust the government's efforts?
Well, in regards to this, there's been a lot of efforts in terms of communication and outreach that Protection Civil, along with the local authorities, is doing. Again, we try to communicate as much as possible. When I say communicate, not just on media, but also locally, because we do have the tradition of having our volunteers do community outreach, do, get to those communities with megaphones and get them around and to actually participate in anything that we do. So why we try to accompany and work along with most of the organizations that we core on the ground, so we can actually make sure that the communications goes through. That's for 1 second, that they see that we're part of what is being done from whichever organization it is, so that the people can have trust and keep working with us. But in terms of really liaising or communicating with the population, as I said, there is a lot that's been done. There's a lot of effort that has been done up until now. As I said before, the orange shirts are still very and also trusted. It's the civil is a trusted base, because whenever we commit what we do, since we work a lot with a lot of education and sensibilisation, making sure that people know what the risks are, what's going on to do, and so forth and so on. So from that perspective, yes, we do communicate, and also right now we are trying also to communicate in regards to what's being done, and trying to communicate to what's being done, and be delicate about it, not so that it doesn't sound like propaganda or sound like something advertising, but ensure that people that we are doing the work, we'll get there, even if you have quote unquote you haven't been reached yet, we are on our way and we're getting there.
Okay, Jerry, while I'll have you quickly, what is being done to address the water issue, the clean water issue in the Grandas?
Oh, the clean water issue in the Grandas is basically a logistics issue. When I say logistics, there's two ways to see it. There's a logistics to actually get the water, clean water, to the affected population right now in terms of first response. So we can actually bring water, but also how do we actually fix the problem? There are two ways to fix the problem. First is to work with the government instance that is responsible for it. We're talking about DINEPA, that has been doing a lot of efforts to actually work on the structure that is existing, or do some water trucking in a lot of those places where the structures do not exist, so they can actually install water purification systems, do water trucking too, so they can bring water to the people. But also there is another approach in terms of disaster response where we can potentialize the existing suppliers of clean water. I'm talking about private institutions that actually are doing that as a business. And one of the things that we have been advocating, for instance, with the diaspora, is instead of sending down crates of water and literally inundating the people with water, buy this water as a credit to at those private institutions that actually sell water, so that this water, which is already there and already local, can be distributed directly to the population, which bridges the gap of logistics and security and all the challenges that we have to face if we have to bring the water down. So again, there are two ways to see it. We're trying to work on both ways, depending on where it is, because as you know, geographically, it's really wide, and depending on the place and the context, the reality is different. But then again, it is an issue that's being addressed as an emergency right now, especially in the goodness, as I showed in the map. It is an issue, it is a request, and we're acting upon it. Over.
Great. So we're going to wrap up, and I want to first of all just thank each of you, and I'm going to throw out 3 questions, and you are free to take either one of them or 3. The first one has to do with Kit Miyamoto, who's he's been around for a while. He referred to this earthquake as the forgotten disaster. And so one of our attendees wanted to know whether or not you agree with that. My other question would be, someone asked about the Matissan area with the roads being blocked, even before this disaster, after this disaster, what is being done? And third, I would be remiss if I did not mention the diaspora. The question that I get asked all of the time is, what can the diaspora do? How can they assist? How can they get money, or who can they support? So in just wrapping up, or if there is a message that you want to make sure that our audience out there understands about this disaster or the efforts that you are doing, I welcome each of you. And I'm going to start with Bruno, because I was thinking about Matissan with you, but I know you've made some comments recently about the international community not being able, they should not forget this disaster and the ongoing needs going forward.
Yeah, well, it's not only don't forget this disaster, don't forget Haiti. What I was told a few days after, the bad luck for Haiti, that there was the Afghanistan pullout. And then it had a direct impact on Haiti in terms of where the radar was going. So there is a fatigue for Haiti because it's piling up years after years, it's crisis after crisis, donors are fatigued. So it's very, and there are only few donors. There are very few, but very large donors in Haiti. And many of what we call the like-minded donors, the Nordic, many have left, they have minimal presence now. So it's very, very difficult to, beyond the advocacy we are making, or they are making for themselves with the big donors, yeah, the US, Canada, EU, and others. It's very hard to broaden this circle. So yes, a lot needs to be done to make sure Haiti is kept on the map, including for these disasters. On the diaspora, my advice is cash is the best way. Cash is the best way. Don't bother to send box of soaps, yeah, or box of spaghettis. This is adding a lot of this difficulty for yourself, yeah, for the bureaucracy, for the custom, for the airport, for the logistics. Cash is in general in any humanitarian assistance. Wherever cash transfer is feasible, do cash transfer. So for diaspora, I'm sure Jerry has ideas, but I think Agerka is a good go-to place if you want to know how to channel your cash. There are reputable Haitian foundation who will deal with your cash, or you can go through other ways, including the UN. But this is the less problematic and the most efficient way of assisting the affected people. Thank you.
Tim, I'll let you go. I'll let you jump
Okay.
in first.
Yeah, thanks, Jerry. Yeah, I'll go a couple of questions. I think, Kit's comment, I mean, clearly, I think there's a challenge of limited donors for a lot of different reasons. And I think there are some donors who may see, this is kind of the US backyard. Clearly on the USAID side, I think we didn't forget about Haiti. As I mentioned, Jackie, one of the things that we learned from 11 years ago is, we have it's a 10 to 12 person humanitarian team on the ground all the time to work with Jerry on preparedness efforts and so forth. I think that the big challenge is, regarding that is as Bruno just said, Haiti next steps. Now that kind of the limelight goes away, I think there's the emergency work continues, and then even the work, as Jerry mentioned earlier, just for the preparedness efforts, whether it's storms or another earthquake, I think that will be incredibly important that all donors who are there continue to remember Haiti, but coordinated through DPC on their vision and plan for disaster management. Regarding roads being blocked, I'll just say I think it's so important to always coordinate efforts together. That has to be with DPC, that has to be with the partners, whether it's AID or the UN, that has to be with the police as well. I mean, it has to be well coordinated. When it's well coordinated, I think we saw it work. And regarding the diaspora, I think there's two comments I have. One, obviously the cash is best, but I also think, we hosted the National Haitian American Elected Officials Network, the DART did when they came down. I think, finding local groups who are doing some excellent work is also another opportunity, maybe where the diaspora can kind of invest in and work in, because there are, I've seen a lot of local groups who are doing some great stuff in Haiti, coordinating with Jerry, Mission of Hope and others. So, but obviously, finding groups and donating cash to those groups who are established, who have systems, who have networks in the communities, who have a long history of commitment to Haiti, that would be my recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. And Jerry, we're going to have you wrap it up.
Right. So again, I think that my predecessors have made very good points about those various questions. Indeed, Bruno hit the nail on the head regarding the diaspora. Indeed, that would be the best way to go, because we're 1 month out of the situation. So right now we're out of the acute emergent response phase. So now it's time to really think of things that can really be consistent in terms of support and what the diaspora can bring. Of course, we still remain available because we've been assisting the diaspora with the support that they've been bringing in, and they brought it. A lot of them have sent it through us, and we are continuing to work with IOM, that is bridging the gap between us and diaspora, and also with Ajaka. In regards to the Matissa issue and the security issue overall, there's Tim just said it. It takes it's about teamwork, working together, being coordinated, and working with the security, working with the national police. And up until now, we have to say that we've had over 150 convoys on the road. None of them has had major issues in terms of security, and this is because there's been this collaborative work for bringing the humanitarian support. So we hope this coalition stays intact, so we can keep doing that work, because it is still needed. And in regards to Mr. Miyamoto's comment, yes, indeed, we can become a forgotten disaster, and I think I really want to take the opportunity to thank the Jack Gordon Institute for Public Policy and all of you for actually hosting that panel. That keeps us on the map, that keeps the attention, and that keeps people to know actually what's going on, and to know, and as Bruno said, even if we slipped out of the headlines, we still do have issues, and there are issues still to be addressed. We are thankful for having the UN system and Bruno and all of his team. We had team that came down, and his team is still here locally to work with us. We have the support of the CDMA through via the CARICOM, but again, like I said, it's still ongoing, and we still have a lot going on. So we still need all of that support and all of that input in terms of not only just logistic and material support, but also advice, information sharing, and all of that. So I thank you, Jacqueline, for all that you're doing via the press as well, because the press is one of our biggest, I would say, medium for communicating what's going on. And again, I want to express the gratitude in general, and I want to say that we are committed to keep working and to making sure that all of the affected population get, the support that we need, that they need. Thank you.
And thank each of you for, I know you guys have very busy schedules, and so thank you. The comments I've seen is that this is very informative. Some people are asking, can it be, put in Creole and just be put out there so people understand and see what has been done, what needs to be done, and the continuous challenges. And again, I want to thank each and every one of you, as well as FIU and the Jack Gordon Institute. Bruce, Randy, I'm turning it over to you.
Thanks so much, Jacqueline, and thank you for a masterful job of moderating. I never envy the position of being a moderator with such good questions coming in and trying to reach them all before our limited time runs out. So appreciate that. Tim, Jerry, Bruno, absolutely fantastic remarks, and we hope to have you back. And again, for future discussions, as Jerry mentioned, this is something that we deeply care about, especially here in South Florida, because it impacts us directly. So we want to keep the conversation going. So I would be remiss if I didn't highlight again our partners in this effort: the Kimberly Green Latin American Caribbean Center, the Extreme Advanced Institute, and the African and African Diaspora Studies Program for supporting us in getting the word out. If you want to see this recording and our last recording and all other information related to the post-Haiti earthquake recovery efforts and aid efforts, again, go to srh.fiu.edu. I repeat, srh.fiu.edu for the latest recordings and information. So thank you all again. Appreciate the support and look forward to the next discussion. Have a good one.